The prairie stretched out in every direction, endless and unchanging, beneath a sky that seemed too large, too empty. For miles, nothing broke the flat horizon except the occasional scatter of dry, brittle grass swaying in the constant, whispering wind. It was a desolate land, and it took a strong mind to live there. Many came with dreams of prosperity, of taming the wilds. Few stayed. Martha knew this all too well. She had followed her husband, Samuel, out into the Nebraska territory with hopes of building a new life. They had settled on a parcel of land far from the nearest town, where Samuel insisted they would be free to shape their own destiny. For the first few months, they were happy, their homestead a beacon of life amidst the barren expanse. But as the seasons turned, the vastness of the prairie began to gnaw at them like a hunger that could never be sated. The prairie had a way of getting inside you. The wind was always there, carrying with it a low murmur that one could almost mistake for voices. In the beginning, Martha thought it was her imagination, the result of too many quiet days with only the howl of the wind for company. But as winter set in, the whispers grew more distinct. At night, when the wind rattled the shutters and the darkness pressed against the thin walls of their cabin, Martha could hear them, a chorus of soft, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Samuel noticed the change in her, how she grew more withdrawn, staring out into the endless prairie as if searching for something. He tried to console her, telling her it was just the isolation, the loneliness of their remote life. He even suggested they go back east, but Martha refused. They had come too far, invested too much. Besides, something was drawing her to the land, something she couldn't explain. Then came the nights when the sky changed. It started as a glow on the horizon, faint and green, pulsating like the heartbeat of the earth. At first, Martha thought it was just the northern lights, but it grew brighter each night until it was almost blinding. Samuel could see it too, but he dismissed it as a natural phenomenon, nothing to worry about. Yet Martha knew better. She could feel it in her bones, a cold dread that settled deep within her. One night, unable to sleep, Martha went outside to confront the glow. The prairie was eerily silent, the wind gone as if holding its breath. She stood there, staring at the sky, and for a moment, it felt as if the world had stopped. Then she heard it, the whispers. Louder now, insistent. They surrounded her, filled her head with a cacophony of voices speaking in a language she could not understand. She wanted to run, to scream, but her body was rooted to the spot, her eyes fixed on the glowing sky. Suddenly, Samuel was beside her, shaking her, his voice cutting through the noise. "Martha! Martha, what is it?" He pulled her back toward the cabin, and the spell was broken. Inside, he held her close, but she could see the fear in his eyes. He had heard it too. After that night, things changed. Samuel became withdrawn, his face gaunt and eyes hollow. He spent hours outside, standing in the fields, staring at the horizon as if expecting something. Martha tried to talk to him, to break through the wall that had grown between them, but he only muttered about the land, how it was speaking to him, how they had to listen. The glow in the sky returned, more intense each time. Samuel would disappear at night, leaving Martha alone in the cabin with the whispers. She tried to follow him once, but he turned on her with a wild look in his eyes, warning her to stay away. After that, she locked herself inside, barricading the door, the whispers swirling around her like a storm. Days blurred into nights and time lost all meaning. Samuel stopped coming back to the cabin. She would see him sometimes, standing in the fields with his arms raised toward the sky, as if in supplication. His skin had turned a sickly gray, his eyes vacant, Yet there was something in his expression, reverence perhaps, or madness. Then came the night of the storm. Martha woke to a howling wind that shook the cabin to its foundations. Lightning flashed, illuminating the prairie in an eerie green light. She heard Samuel's voice outside, not in pain or fear, but in joy, as if he was welcoming the storm. Martha peered out the window and saw him, silhouetted against the pulsating sky. He was not alone. Figures moved around him, indistinct shapes that seemed to flicker in and out of existence, their forms bending and warping with the light. The whispers surged, louder than ever, filling the air with a sound that was neither human nor natural. Martha clutched her ears, but it was no use. The voices were inside her mind, tearing at the edges of her sanity. She stumbled back, falling to the floor, her vision blurring. Through the chaos, she caught a glimpse of Samuel walking toward the figures, his face illuminated by the unnatural glow. He looked peaceful, serene, as if he had found what he was searching for. Martha blacked out. When she awoke, the storm was gone. The cabin was deathly quiet, the oppressive silence broken only by the creak of the settling wood. She rose on unsteady legs and opened the door. The prairie was calm, the sky clear and blue as if nothing had happened. But Samuel was gone. There was no trace of him, nor of the figures she had seen. Only the dry, empty land stretched before her, indifferent and eternal. Martha wandered the fields, calling for him, but there was no response. Days turned into weeks, and she was alone. The whispers had not left, though. They were quieter now, a constant murmur at the edge of her hearing. She began to understand them, not in words, but in feelings, impressions. They spoke of the prairie, of the land and sky, of things older and stranger than she could fathom. In the end, she stopped looking for Samuel. She stayed on the land, living in the cabin, her mind slowly unraveling. The prairie had claimed her, just as it had claimed him. And on certain nights, when the sky glowed green and the wind fell silent, Martha would go out into the fields, her eyes fixed on the horizon, listening to the voices that only she could hear. She would stand there until dawn, whispering back to them, her words carried away on the breath of the endless prairie. To this day, travelers speak of the land out there, the abandoned homestead where a woman roams the fields, her face turned to the sky, mouthing words to the wind. They say the prairie has a life of its own, that it whispers to those who dare to listen. And some say if you stand out there long enough, you can hear it too. The voice of the land calling you into its embrace, drawing you into the endless, whispering void.